Good morning, guys. We're going to look at scene 9 of Streetcar Named Desire today. Remembering what we left off in scene 8 with, this was, when Stella was being rushed to the hospital. We know that the stress of Blanche and Stanley arguing has kind of officially taken its toll on, she and the baby, so that's where they currently are. And we know Stanley's with her because it is his wife and his child after all. So if you look at page 122 in scene 9, it opens with Blanche sitting by herself in the apartment. A couple of things to look at here. So she's wearing her red scarlet satin robe, which we know symbolizes passion, lust, desire, sin, and we also have her drinking yet again. And Williams does tell us in these scene directions that she is drinking to escape the music that's in her head, the Vesuviana, which, if you can recall, was playing on the night that her husband had committed suicide. So this is what goes on, and she's been dealing with this entire time, okay? It's in her head. So we know that, Blanche is dealing with some mental illness. Right about the time that she's here in the apartment dealing with this, we've got a visitor, and it's Mitch. As far as we were concerned, we thought Mitch was a goner, that he was done because, Stanley chose to disclose Blanche's past to him, and he wanted nothing to do with her because he believes that she's a morally corrupt person. But yet here he is. So we're going to look at why on page 123. Before we do that, I do want to talk about Blanche continuing to be deceptive toward Mitch. This is seen on page 122 through 125. When she hears the knocking and she knows that it's Mitch, first thing that she does is hide the liquor and tries to make sure that she looks okay before she opens the door. When he actually is in there, she claims that she has no idea what alcohol is in the apartment. She pretends to go find the bottle. She pretends that she has no idea what Southern Comfort is, and she pretends that she has no idea what to mix it with. So all the way to 125, there are those lies. Wanted to point that out to you. When we get to page 125, the reason why Mitch is here, I believe, is to get answers. I think he wants to hear it directly from Blanche, her past, why she did what she did when she lied to him. So on page 125, you could tell he's working through all these things, and Blanche says, what's on your mind? I see something's in your eyes. And he says, it's dark in here. And she goes, I like the dark. It's comforting to me. And he goes, I've never seen you in the light. Couple of meanings, I believe. So obviously there's the literal one where Mitch says, look, you never actually turn on the light when you're around me, which we believe is probably because Blanche believes that being in the full light would reveal her wrinkles, probably her imperfections, would probably show us that she is in fact older than she says she is. But we could also see that this goes beyond that it could mean that Blanche has never really shown him who she truly is as a person, and that she's kept him in the dark on that this entire time. So I think that's the reason why Mitch is here, one of the reasons why Mitch is here. And this is reinforced further on page 126 when he says, what it means is that I've never had a real good look at you, Blanche. Let's turn on the light and, kind of see that. And, Blanche is not going to do that so easily. But it also means I want you to be real with me, Blanche. Tell me really what's going on. And, he kind of forces that on her on page 126 because he actually tears the paper lantern off the light bulb, so it would have that full-blown light. There's not a sheen over it. And, she utters a frightened gasp, which, she didn't want that to happen. So anyway, so ripping off the paper lantern could symbolize Mitch tearing down her facade, tearing away her illusion, and forcing her to deal with the harsh reality, okay? So some symbolism there. Going forward, he says, I want to take a good look at you, a good plain look at you. And she says, of course, you don't really mean to be insulting. And he says, no, just realistic. And she says, I don't want realism, I want magic. So she chooses to live in this fantasy world. And she goes further to say, yes, magic. I try to give that to people. I misrepresent things to them. I don't tell truth. I tell what ought to be the truth. So what she believes to be the truth in her own mind. And she says, if that's sinful, then let me be damned for it. But don't take that away from me. is what she tells Mitch. And even though she requests this, Mitch does not listen to her and crosses over to the light switch, flicks it on, and stares at her. And of course, she cries out and covers her face. Mitch, after doing this, says, look, I could have dealt with the fact that you were older than me, but all the rest of it, really, the things that you said, tell me about being old-fashioned and not wanting to, go even further in terms of intimacy, and all the malarkey that you've dished out about your past this entire summer. He said, I knew you weren't 16 anymore, but I didn't realize that you weren't straight, meaning that I really thought that you were a morally sound person. Okay. I was crazy to believe otherwise. Okay. Moving forward, we get on page 126, basically Blanche's confession about her past to Mitch. And the first thing that she confirms is that she was at a hotel. It wasn't, according to her, the Flamingo. It was the Tarantula where she brought her victims. And, there at that particular hotel, she had a lot of intimacies with strangers. After her husband's death, that's where she turned to for comfort. That's where she believed she could fill the emptiness in her heart. And panic, drove her, as she mentioned, from one place to another, hunting for some sort of protection, some sort of escape from her past experiences. And then eventually it drove her to do something that was even more questionable, which was her involvement with a 17-year-old student. That was the reason why she was run out of town. The reason why she was basically fired from her job was because she was morally unfit for that position. And I also see that in the directions here sort of reflects Blanche's crazy nature, because she throws back her head with this convulsive sobbing laughter and repeats statements, drinking and gasping as she goes. And further on, she brings up why she lied to Mitch, because she said, when I met you, I believed that you were that soft place to land, that you were someone that, I could be with, that would relieve me from my past. Okay, so that's why she did what she did. But of course, for Mitch, this is hard to deal with. She did lie to him. It began with lies. But according to Blanche on page 129, she says, inside, I never did lie in my heart. So she believes in what she tells everyone else. Okay, so as Blanche and Mitch are having this discussion on page 129, we have this vendor, this Mexican lady coming by selling flowers. Okay, she says, flores, flores, flores para los muertos, which translates to flowers for the dead. And I kind of think that this is symbolic, because, it could really symbolize the death of Blanche's reputation, the death of her facade, because now everything's out on the table, the light has been shed on her past. So there it is. It is dead and gone. And about this time, we also have polka music fading in, which is probably because, the flowers are for the dead and it reminds her of her dead husband. So going on to page 130, she does talk a little bit more about death. She says that death, she says, death, I used to sit here and she used to sit there, and death was as close as you are. We didn't dare even admit that we'd ever heard of it. This, to me, tells me that she's reliving also not only the death of her husband, but the death of her relatives, okay, back at Belle Reve. And then she says the opposite of death is desire. And what I think here is that, death drove her to desire, which she believed would help her cope, but it actually ruined her in so many ways. Desire drove her to the death of her reputation. Okay, so then we also have the Mexican woman, while she's saying this sort of thing, continuing to cry out, flowers for the dead, flowers for the dead. And I believe this really helps to establish that somber, sad mood, as, Blanche is telling us about her past. Okay, so that is what I want to talk to you about on page 130. Let's see, what else do I have for you? Blanche does ask that Mitch marry her. Of course, he does not want to do so because he believes she's not clean enough to bring in the house with his mom. I kind of think that this reflects a double standard here. You know, men can sort of get away with anything. They can be immoral. They could sleep with many women. But if a woman did something like that, you know, she's unfit. She's unclean. She's not able to be married, or shouldn't be married. So anyway, it just seems as though no one else's reputation is ruined except for hers. So I just thought that I would point that out to you. Because right after this is why I bring up the double standard thing, because right after that, the only thing that he wants is to engage in intimate behaviors with her. Okay. So again, it's okay if he does it, but not okay if she were to do it. And of course, Blanche is not wanting this to happen and sort of screams out, fire, 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 which is a way to get him away from her. I also think that there could be symbolic here, because fire could mean desire on Mitch's part. It could be, it could represent destruction or damage on Blanche's part. So I thought I'd bring that up to you. And that's how this scene ends. So I thought that that would help you guys out. If you do have questions, just send me an email and I will get back to you, okay? So see you later.